blue from the last exhibit I just showed you. The dark blue is where you could potentially have tidal flooding. This is not rain flooding. This is tidal flooding from the worst case scenario, water getting up to about elevation 3.25. Then the light blue is what it could additionally get to after about 50 years of relative sea level rise. And that's a combination of sea level rising and subsidence of the land. This is a long linear one, so I cut it in half. This is the north end of North Beach, and that's the south end. So as you can see, the vast majority of the streets out there are below high tide level. And so what we're seeing right now with sunny day flooding is that those streets are underwater. And it's not just drainage, it's sea level, it's tidal flooding. So what we're really looking at is a two-part solution here, which is, number one, we got to get the land up. The city's got to get the streets up and get a way for the drainage to get out. And then also the residents that have the property out there, the business owners, are going to be responsible for raising their property if it's not already at an elevation it needs to be. What I'm showing here is the existing systems that are already in place, and those are in place and in working, but they need help. They need to be regularly maintained. And here's a couple of bullet points that I've actually already touched on. And the system, it's there and it helps, but and I'll tell you, in the last report that was done last year, they said it was undersized, and that was on existing conditions. So when we did our report and we looked at it, we looked at a full build out for North Beach, which is based on the future land use plan. So if we're going to put something in there and expect development to happen, we need to be sizing the drainage for the proposed development. This is the two-part solution we talked about. Number one, we got to provide some additional capacity and a better way for that water to get out. Part of that includes the concept of doing shorter lines, smaller lines that we don't have to push down so far to where they stay submerged. And there's also the opportunity to clean and reshape the ditches on the side streets so that the water can get to where it needs to better. The other part is raising the property. The city will need to put in the drainage infrastructure and raise the streets. Those are their responsibility. But I want to make sure everyone in this room understands that the individual properties are going to have to be addressed too if they're too low. The concept that we came up with was that we needed some additional infrastructure that was going to be very close to, as close as we could, to all the existing properties that are out there. So if we put one long piece of infrastructure down the middle, we could be within a block or two of almost every property on North Beach. That gives you the opportunity to have shorter runs of smaller pipe that don't have to be shoved down and be submerged underwater with some of the issues that come along with that. The other recommendation that we're making is to have an open system, whether that's a ditch or a channel. Over time, if you do need to maintain it, that's the easiest way to do it. To have an open channel you can drive a vehicle next to with a long reach excavator, get out there and clean it out. Closed systems are a little bit more difficult. We need to provide some larger outfalls because we're going to be handling more water, and then again raise the streets up above high tide levels so that high tide isn't affecting us the same way. Option one was essentially a traditional closed conduit system, adding boxes that go down Timon and Surfside. This is not one that we're particularly excited about. It's the most expensive. It's difficult, can be difficult to maintain if sediment does get in there. It also provides the least beneficial hydraulic improvement. The second option is the open ditch. This is the most cost effective. It's easy to maintain and provides a very good hydraulic improvement over what we have now. This is a layout for what those two options would look like. They're essentially going north-south down the middle, and then we would have small laterals coming off to the side to help drain the streets to the side. The third one is one that I think everyone's seen in the renderings and videos that have gone around. This is a navigable channel. It costs a bit more than the ditch. It's still easy to maintain, and it provides actually the best hydraulic improvement, and that's substantially because that option had a wide navigable channel out to the bay. It had by far the largest connection. So by default, it was going to have the easiest way to get out. This is the layout that we looked at for option 3. All three of these are going to have some impacts on the existing utilities that are out there. Right now, there's utilities that cross the median between Timon and Surfside. If a structure goes in there, whether it's a box or a ditch or a navigable channel, some of those will have to be adjusted down to go underneath or rerouted around. And some of them that run the length of Timon and Surfside may have to be moved over. Probably see a pretty shocking number here on option 1. This was one that, again, we're not excited about, but option 2 and option 3, I think, are doable options. Okay, there's a little bit added there that I didn't know was going to be there. So, in conclusion, permanent drainage solution for North Beach needs to include significant additional drainage improvements. The system that's there is fine, but it's not going to have the capacity to really serve that area build out. You can't solve the drainage problem out there without raising the streets too. Right now, the biggest flooding problem we have is on days we don't even have rain. The other thing is that North Beach needs fill dirt as much as it needs to have drainage improvements. So we're recommending looking at all kinds of options to secure fill material. Get it stockpiled out there. People can raise their property when they're able to. We think that North Beach, if we're going to do this, needs to consider a long-range plan to get those roads raised up, and that options 2 and 3 are probably the two options that I think need to be considered and pursued as a permanent solution.